Hey there everybody, AJ back with another monster video for the TMG channel. Today we're going to take a closer look at the ecology of ghosts in the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game. First off, it's important to note that ghosts are very much a result of something that happened in the past, either distant or recent, and the reason they exist is vitally important to how they manifest and behave. Of all the undead creatures in Dungeons & Dragons, I would say that ghosts are the most open to interpretation and adaptation by the DM, depending on the story and challenge a DM wants to create using them. So I'll cover the bare bones of what a ghost can do, as it is listed in the Monster Manual to start off with. Turning to page 147, we see that the example shown is a challenge rating 4. It has an armor class of 11 and 45 hit points. All the stats are average, aside from the charisma, which is high, and the strength, which is low. It has 60-foot dark vision, passive perception of 11, and knows only the languages and memories it had in life. If it even has much recollection at all. Ghosts are, for the most part, creatures of memory, not creative thought. I'll elaborate on that later on in this video. The challenging nature of the ghost is that it is barely material at all. It has total immunity to being charmed, exhausted, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, knocked prone, restrained, takes no damage at all from cold or necrotic attacks, obviously. It's resistant to acid, fire, lightning, thunder, bludgeoning, piercing or slashing damage from any weapon or damage source that's not magically enchanted. They are not invulnerable, certainly, but they are damned hard to destroy without magical enhancement. And they are hard to pin down, since any ghost can move through any other creature or object as if they were merely difficult terrain. To a ghost, moving through a person is like us stepping through a campfire. You can pass through it carefully, but if you stop midway through, you're going to get burned, and the ghost cannot lurk inside a wall or a rock, because ending its turn inside an object inflicts 1d10 force damage on them. There is an exception to this rule, however, and that is possession, where a ghost gets within 5 feet of a living being and attempts to possess it. Now, I say living being, it doesn't necessarily have to be a human or other humanoid, and ghosts don't have to be humanoids either. Just bear that in mind. At a challenge rating of 4, the DC for this charisma-based saving throw is 13. If the victim fails, they are now aware but powerless passengers inside their own body. The ghost takes over them like some sort of autopilot. This is a powerful effect because the victim only gets one saving throw. If they succeed, the ghost is locked out for the next 24 hours and cannot try to possess them again in that time. However, if they fail, they stay possessed until the ghost decides to leave, or the body is reduced to 0 hit points, or the ghost is forced out with a spell like Dispel Evil and Good. Attempting to turn undead will force the ghost to run away, but it doesn't force it out of the body. This means a person could be possessed by a ghost for years, and the victim doesn't get another saving throw after a set amount of time. They are trapped in their body while another entity makes use of it. The possessing ghost has no access to their mind, memory, or skills, and the powers of that individual, though it only knows what it knew in life. This, of course, leaves you open to introduce the idea of priests who can perform rituals to get rid of ghosts, and I'd highly recommend that you do so in the case of a ghost that wants to linger. Outside of the living body, the touch of a ghost is viciously necrotic, inflicting 46 plus 3 necrotic damage at challenge rating 4 and with a plus 5 bonus to hit. Unless it's a fairly obvious one, it's fairly obvious one's facing a ghost, they can really get to be quite a surprise, as ghosts don't have to appear ethereal shades floating about and moving through walls and doors. They can appear almost completely normal for a few moments, and then wham, they unleash a withering grasp or attempt a possession, or simply unveil the true horrific visage that they have, possibly scaring the pants off anyone living unfortunate enough to be within 60 feet of them. This horrific visage is, without a doubt, one of the most brutal attacks in the game. Not quite as bad as being possessed for a potentially indefinite period, but still really bad. And as with the possession ability, the saving throw for this is 13. Remember, you can raise or lower this difficulty by making a ghost a higher or lower challenge rating. This time, the saving throw is wisdom based, and failing to resist will result in the victim being frightened for a full minute unless it makes another saving throw at the end of each of their turns. However, failing this saving throw by more than 5 points, so getting a result of lower than 8, will also drain away 10 to 40 years of that victim's life. That's right, they age on the spot 1d4 times 10 years. Obviously, this is not a huge issue for an elf, but it's very nasty to someone who happens to be playing a goblin or an orc. They could almost be instantly killed by this. At the very least, they're going to suffer for it with reduced strength and vitality. Not to mention how terrifying it would be, on top of already being frightened supernaturally. If that character got aged 40 years and ran for their very life, I would require a wisdom saving throw just to pluck up the courage to go back to where that happened to them. It's that scary. I mentioned ghosts as creatures of memory. Now, they are creatures, they are souls trapped on the material plane, unable to pass over to the deep ethereal and go on to whatever afterlife they're destined for. They can drift between the border ethereal and material world at will, and can see into either from either side. But they're not very aware of what is going on in the here and now. They're locked into some sort of specific emotional state, some terrible sadness, anger, sense of loss or frustration, something that's tying them to the living world as surely as a ball and chain to the leg of a bird. There is an excellent supplement called Haunts on the DM's Guild. I recommend you pick that up, as it details a simple system for representing ghost hauntings as more than just a random encounter with floating spirits. For example, let's say you're on the site of an old collapsed mine shaft. You heard a rumour that some bags of gold nuggets were left in the office behind a caved-in section of the mine. So you venture down and find the pile and begin to haul away rocks and dig through the lighter rubble. It's wet and cold. The smell of the mine is stale. Your lights begin to flicker and you can hear heavy breathing, grunts and the scrapes of rocks. It seems to be coming from just on the other side of where you're digging. You call out, but the person doesn't answer, just continues to dig. And now you hear muttering and a yelling for help. Perhaps you dig harder, trying to rescue them. Surely it can't be far now. You can hear them clearly. You lift a heavy rock and see below you the tarnished, smashed bones of someone's skull, and realize that these are bits of bone all around your feet. The sound of digging stops. A voice right in front of you yells, "Hello? Is anyone there? Please, I can't get out." And then there's a ghostly hand reaching through the rock, and out lurches a twisted and crushed figure, the head a gory mess, eyes hanging out, tongue flopping from a broken and torn jaw. It reaches out and screams, "Why won't you help me?" There are a few ways to deal with this. The first, of course, is to run away and never come back, perhaps be courteous enough to post a sign warning of the danger. The second is to resist the urge to wet oneself, draw weapons and do battle, until the ghost is ripped apart and fades from sight. This, however, is just a temporary solution. The ghost will eventually come back. You cannot kill that which does not live. The ghost merely lurks in the ethereal plane, confused and broken. It will be compelled eventually to return to the source of its lingering torment. The third option is to deal with why the ghost has manifested in the first place. Perhaps taking bones away and giving them a proper burial is all it would take to satisfy this soul, who died in a second cave-in as it tried to claw its way out. So you can see it's as much the lead-in to the encounter that is as much fun as the fight with the creature. And with ghosts, this is really the whole point. They are scary. They are horrible. They are also sometimes sad or hateful. In some rare instances, the thing that ties a spirit to the world is hatred. More often, this results in other types of foul undead, such as wights. I'll talk about them pretty soon. Other times, the ghost will be compelled to actively harm the living. They are still creatures that process the world around them through the lens of memory. They don't see the present, not really. They just see what they once saw, triggered by what happening around them. For instance, if you're confronted by a ghost which killed members of its own family to inherit the family manor and now wanders the burnt ruin of it, when it sees a character, it may float towards them, calling out someone else's name, and then lash out them with a spectral dagger. It may possess someone, not intending to harm them, but using that body to walk towards a person it sees as a member of its own family. It's killing them again and again and again. So if you know the story of the ghost, you might possibly be able to talk to it, resolve the trauma that it's keeping it in the mortal world. If you are a fan of the ghost stories of Japan, forget about resolution and just burn everything to the ground, post signs and never go there again. Japanese ghost stories never have happy endings. Remember, ghosts possess people to follow their own agenda. They are replaying events that happened in their life, usually right before their death. They may be merely seeking justice or the recovery of their hidden remains. They might linger in the site of an old battle, waiting for someone to take up their old and tarnished holy symbol and give a prayer to their god. They may drag people down into the sewers to drown them as they seek to claw their way over dead bodies to escape, not knowing that they died long ago. Obviously, there's no short of inspiration for ghost encounters in your game. They are synonymous with storytelling, after all. Thanks for the request. Thanks for listening. Thank you for the Patreon supporters who get access to this video a little bit early. And thank you for listening. I'll be back again with another video for you soon.